Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Give everybody a chance to get online. Okay, let's start with meditation. So take your attention inside. And with your breath, try to pull your attention down below your belly button. And feel into that energy center with your attention. Hold your attention there as though this is the most important part of your body, the most important part of your being, rather than between your ears. And you can ask, is there anything I need to know in this energy center? At the same time, gently breathe into this center and feel the breath expand and your awareness of the space between the breaths become more. When you're ready, drop your attention to the tip of your tailbone at the very bottom of your spine. Again, you can ask to be informed. And when you're ready, gently allow your attention to rise to the energy center just below our rib cage, the solar plexus. Feel for the space between the breaths. When you're ready, gently take your attention to your heart center. Feel into the back of your heart. See if you can get a little more access back there. When you're ready, take your attention to your throat center. When you're ready, allow your attention to go up to your third eye. When you're ready, allow your attention to go to the top of your head. There's a big flower, the 1,000-petaled lotus. Let that flower just open. And now take your attention about 8 inches above your head, 6 or 8, depending on how long your torso is. There's an energy center above our heads. And now we encourage you to take your attention back to the energy center below your belly button. And holding your attention inside, gently open your eyes. With some care to maintain this field that you've generated in and around you that's different from where we started. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. You'll have the sensation of being two places at once and nowhere at all. We welcome your questions this morning. So we've been thinking a little bit about the meaning of the word discipline and the relationship of that word to the word disciple. And how when you commit yourself to inner work, you're using your discipline to become a disciple of source energy itself. Along the way, attracting different teachers who help you achieve that union. So discipline used in that way to that purpose can help to really see that we're in alignment between our thoughts, speech, inner, and action. And I've noticed that most people spend a lot of their discipline and self-talk about dissatisfaction with what they have created in themselves. And that dissatisfaction is often judgment that itself is the limitation to change. Because remember the formula that where we put our attention is what grows. So if we're constantly thinking about and judging ourselves as being less than what we hope or expect, then we're actually reinforcing that rather than engaging our discipline, our discipleship to the highest in becoming a finer, internally richer person. who's more at peace. Because what is it that we really want? You know, we say love, and that has so many meanings that it almost doesn't mean anything. And then peace is a different aspect to think about that. What it means to really be at peace and what it would take within us a kind of total self-acceptance that allows for union. Doesn't mean that we decide we don't have any shortcomings. But we understand that we're a dynamic process. And that it is the experience of union which actually changes us to begin to believe that peace is possible. Because if we expect peace in the outer world without first achieving it within ourselves, we're not likely to even know what that is. Yes, I think we're getting a question. Maybe not. Yes.
Astrological question about this period where the eclipse is, retrograde, but it's mainly about the energy of the sun and how that's being challenged now.
So the question is about the astrology and how we're between eclipses. We're in eclipse season. And sun has moved into its sign of exaltation, where it's usually the happiest. But the problem is that the north node of the moon, Rahu, is also in Aries, sun's happy place. And they are approaching each other because Rahu moves backwards as sun moves forward. And the closer they get, the more intense it is because they are arch enemies. So sun is strong but unhappy. And Rahu is the great disruptor. the planet of insatiable desire. And he's always somewhere. But at this particular location, in this particular moment, it's creating agitation and a sort of internal discomfort for most people in the world. So just knowing that can give us a little bit of room in ourselves to give ourselves and the people around us a little leeway in balancing these difficult energies. Because agitation is kind of a variation on a theme right now. And most of us will have some counterbalancing helpful energies coming in from someplace in our own charts. But it's pretty intense because sun is, really the most powerful object in our sky because of its proximity and heat. And moon is over there being helpful wherever it is. It's in sun's sign right now. So for a few days, that sun agitation will be there as well. At the same time, eclipses are times, and agitated times like this are the moments when we can go deeply inside and understand that the agitation we feel is not personal. And when we have that perspective, it becomes possible to give ourselves the room to understand that reacting quickly, unless it's in an effort to save our own lives, which fortunately most of us don't have to think about most of the time, reacting quickly is not in our best interest most of the time right now. And so we can take that extra breath before we react, before we act. And actually consider if what we are about to say or do is in our own highest best interest. And then, is it in the highest best interest of the person in front of us? And for most of us, it only happens in that order. There are rare human beings that it happens in the reverse order, but for most of us, it's about self-preservation. and then we can think of the other. And, most of the time it's the same as putting our own oxygen mask on first, so that we can be helpful. But helpful not in a judgmental superior way, but just available. Moving to a more relaxed, ready position than a ready to lash out position. And again, if we look at our own lives, it's the times when we've been under the greatest pressure and had the most difficult things happen to us when we have transformed the most, for most of us. And if we're really lucky, we have transformation that continues during the times when life is easier. But the real things that change us are the unexpected. Disasters that happen to each of us. So it's not that we wish that on ourselves or anybody else. But again, it gives us a little space. And it can help us to be less fearful if we understand that our transformation is made possible by those inner things that we must resolve, inner tensions. And I used to believe that we could just drop them. Except my experience of that is they kept coming back. And you drop them again. But they really, really don't, in my experience, they require resolution. And I would say that resolution is more about integration. It's that we come to peace. it's a very, very tricky thing to come to understand in ourselves. The difference between letting go and something I'll call spiritual bypass. Because there are certain points in our practice where letting go is the answer. It's like the answer. And there are other points where some understanding has to happen. Some coming to a different perspective is what we're talking about by understanding. And in some ways, the deeper we go, the more this capacity to and willingness to investigate and it's not that we have to solve everything exactly, but we have to have enough peace to be able to let go. Of course, it is the nature of karma that we will be informed about that which we have assumed to have conquered and yet to fully meet in ourselves. So it's not that spiritual bypass actually works. It just delays. It delays things. And makes complication for us, both in our inner world and our outer world. Did that answer your question?
This- Focusing on the sun's energy is a question of easing or supporting.
Well, when we focus on any planet's energy, what we're focusing on is that planet's energy within us and how that is informing us in a given moment. And in focusing on those energies within ourselves, we can begin to come to peace with that particular field in us. It's not really about, the sun doesn't care if we pay any attention or not, but it's us that we are it's how these energies play out in our lives and our chart that is we're living through. It's that which that's the value of astrology, is that it can give us an inner map. And well, it's a large system, and Rebecca is still sorting through it. And with our guidance, there is, when you step back and look at the larger view of Vedic culture, it's a patriarchal system with a caste system, and the whole one of the major purposes of astrology in Vedic culture is to understand relationship synastry, the arranged marriage. And the marriage is arranged according to various astrological combinations that lean toward very important male sexual satisfaction, compatibility for having children and being able to raise them. And this is more of a well, we'll just leave it at that. And relationships that will be harmonious, without a lot of stress and strain. And so that the two people are being stressed by the planets at different times so that they can support each other. So, it has to be understood in context. And the context is wanting a peaceful society where people are happy with what they're doing for a living, with their families. They have energy for the extended family. They aren't going to make cultural waves. And then there's a whole layer of, places for the outcasts, and jobs and places, and the idea that better luck next time around with your astrological chart and your life caste system placement. And so it's very interesting, but from an American context, it's interesting. But there are parts of it, and Rebecca, as a learner, tends to take everything in with the benefit of the doubt, because you can always decide later what's real. By experience, it becomes obvious. So, some of the reality starting to come to roost. And it's not a discontent, it's just look at the context. And also there's a whole system of looking very deeply into the various aspects of a human being and seeing what they mean by these derivation charts. There's a whole system of derivation charts, and there are a lot of them. And each one of them gets further away from the original chart because the divisions are so small that if the original chart is off even by a few minutes, then you get nonsense. But you don't know it. But you can, people who are very sophisticated can actually, what they call rectify the chart, make it right with the person's experience by matching up these very tiny segments of the chart with their experience. But I'm not sophisticated enough to judge the accuracy of that in any way, shape, or form. But I find it very interesting. But I know from being in the hospital when babies are born that the primary thing that everyone is thinking about as the baby is being born is not what time it is. And that's true even if you want to concentrate on knowing what time it is. You ask an astrologer who was in the room when their child was being born, they can't concentrate on what time it is, even though they intend to. They might even have their watch right there, but that's not where their attention is at the time it happens, because it's such a magical situation. It's amazing. The energy of it is indescribable for everyone there, no matter how many times you've been there. And so, you could actually say that all birth times are inaccurate. And then there's the whole discussion, is it when the baby takes the first breath? Is it when you cut the cord? Is it when the baby the head first appears? I mean, there are all kinds of decisions to be made about when the birth actually happens. But I can say it's usually when the nurse writes her note and says what time it is then, which could be, 15, 20 minutes after the actual event. Or it could be, if she's really trying to be honest and conscious about it, knowing that astrology exists, then she'll guess, well, has it been 15 minutes or 20 minutes? But that's about as close as it's going to get, unless there's somebody with really focused attention who looks at the clock and remembers. You can look at the clock and forget immediately. And most people in this situation, they've been up 12, 14, 16 hours. They're not going to be at their highest intellectual capacity to remember a number. So that's the truth about birth times. I don't know why I went there, I guess. It's dangerous to ask me about astrology. Won't stop. I'm a little bit tired this morning. I've been I've been watching a conference that's happening in London on Rahu and Ketu, the nodes of the moon. It's 27 lectures, and they start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in London, which is 5 a.m. here. So the last 3 mornings I have done that. And so I'm a little bit tired. It's almost like being jet lagged without leaving your living room. How may we serve this morning? What's up with everybody? The sun finally came out. That's been wonderful. Maybe not this morning. The last 2 days. Anything? Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I guess I want to talk a little about a very difficult dream I had this morning, and how it may relate to a situation with a friend. This friend has decided to drop away from me and my girlfriend because of some things that had happened, and I just recently got a very long letter from her, and I've spent a lot of time kind of holding her up. And so anyway, this dream went into, I was climbing on this cliff, which came to a point on this hike that narrowed and narrowed, and there was several people that were jammed up, kind of caught um, at this difficult hike, this place of kind of not getting off. And there was a black man in a wheelchair that had collapsed, and other people trying to, it's a survival situation. And one of his black children got saved, but the other one, it was at a point that I needed to take this baby, and it just got worse and worse, that it seemed like there was peril. I was going to die, and it was like I was forced to let go of this little baby, which fell down into this crevice and bounced off the side of the wall. And it was very intense. And I believe it has to do with this relationship, or perhaps relationships that I am holding up, holding people up, or a couple people that I've realized I've had to be in check about. But anyway, it's been sticking with me. And I just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit.
So did you actually have to make a decision between your own survival and the baby's, or was it just ripped out of your hands?
It was, I realized the decision was going to happen because there's going to be no choice. It was
Right.
made for me,
Right.
is what seemed like it felt like. But it was so, anyway, it was intense.
Well, there are all kinds of ways to talk about this,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll take it at face value a little bit and say that when things happen to people that we perceive as horrific, the human body is designed to react to trauma with a whole set of drugs that our body makes instantly that makes us totally numb. Our mind stops and we go into shock. That is a state of numbness, usually amnesia as well. And it's as though we're watching it happen to someone else, or, we've left our bodies. But there's a whole compensation system set up in our physical bodies that takes us out of the situation in very real ways in terms of pain and suffering. Pain being the physical event and suffering being the emotional event. And when death happens, we don't exactly know what happens after that. So when we watch these things, we make all kinds of assumptions about how that would feel that are based on no information about what we just told you. So we assume that, the person feels everything that they're going through in the way that we are seeing it. So
Right.
So we are traumatized by what we're seeing, which in a way takes us toward that shock and numbness also. And so there's the feeling for the perceiver is more like a horror. So by knowing the information we just told you, that horror can be a little bit abated. So it's not It's not that it's not horrible. It's just not what we think. And rarely is our perception
Mhm.
in line with what's really happening
Mhm.
in terms of what is happening outside of us.
Yes.
So that can give you a little bit of breathing room as you look at it.
Yeah.
But then there's the relationship with the person you've been propping up, the baby,
Mhm.
and it's being taken out of your hands,
Yeah.
quite literally.
Yes. That's good.
There is no room for a response. You were given a dictum,
Yeah.
which may have very little to do with the reality and shows you exactly where the perception of the other person, at least in that moment, was headed. And that
Mhm.
is probably so far from your perception of what has been happening that
Right.
it seems really appropriate to just let go.
Yeah.
Because here I was thinking I was serving a situation,
Right.
and somehow I'm being blamed for something
Mhm.
that was already there before I came and will continue to be there after I left because it hasn't changed from my input.
Good point.
And
Yeah.
so when it's being taken out of your hands, that's kind of a
So
gift.
I'm so glad I asked. Thank you.
But, there's this tendency to feel horrible
Mhm.
because that's how you felt in the dream,
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
were identifying with what you thought the baby was experiencing.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you were feeling horrible. And
Mhm.
really the intention of that letter was to make you feel bad about yourself,
Mm.
because when people blame us for their suffering
Yeah.
and we know we had nothing to do with causing it,
Yeah.
that's the exit point.
Hmm.
What else can we do?
Yeah.
And what they're really saying is that you have reached a point of your own evolution where they can no longer stand to be with you, because that would force them to change.
Mm.
And they're unwilling to make that change.
Mhm.
And therefore, they are excusing themselves from the table.
Mm. Yeah.
And they don't know how to do it gracefully. They don't have that capacity,
Yeah.
which is why they're doing it,
Mhm.
because their own matrix of belief is too important to them to maintain than to come up to a reality that you have embraced that can no longer
Mm.
be in their field.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you.
you're welcome. But very often, you know, people like that, it's a bouncing ball. They'll bounce right back into your life
Yeah. Yeah.
because once they discover themselves without you, that's
Mm.
far worse.
Mhm.
They're they're they come face to face with their own suffering.
Yeah.
And so,
Well,
you
it's
know,
a great teaching for both of us then.
yes,
Mhm.
yes.
Mhm.
But you see, you need to do nothing.
Mhm. Okay.
And what could you do that would have any impact?
Yeah. This is true.
And, being defensive is totally inappropriate. You haven't done anything wrong.
No, which is true.
Yes.
Explaining or,
No, you grabbed the baby. You held it. You were gonna rescue it. It was grabbed out of your hands. I mean, that's pretty clear.
Yeah, it was, thank you for just going more into that. It felt like it was directly related.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, great.
But, the important thing is that you think about why it was that you felt horrible
Mhm,
and why it was that you felt horrible when you read the letter.
mhm. Yeah.
Because there's that in us which feels responsible for the suffering of those next to us.
Mhm. Right,
And so we do the best we can. We do the
right.
best we can.
Yeah.
We pick up the baby and carry it for a while, but it's ripped out of our hands because it's not ours.
Yeah, right.
So your inner's speaking loud and clear.
Yeah, I asked for that too, for it to be clear. So helping with the finishing touch with you speaking into it with me. Thank you.
Totally
Mhm.
welcome.
Mhm.
Oh, yes, here we are at time for meditation. That went fast. These programs feel like they're getting shorter every week. So, as always, we're going to invite you to do your own meditation. Can you still hear me? And good. And we'll do same. It's been such a joy to be with you. So much pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Till next time. Bye for now.